This is Brian, and I'm going to do the movie soundtrack tag, and hopefully this time I'll upload the correct version of the video. 2 videos ago I did a video and redid it and uploaded the wrong version, so you guys unfortunately saw the lesser video. In any case, this is from Miss 80's Movies and Music, and she has a number of questions about soundtracks. I don't have a ton of soundtracks. It's not something I normally collect, but I do have a number in my collection, and I think I can come up with answers to each of these questions. So the first is, how many soundtracks do you own? I did a count, and I think I have 41 soundtracks on vinyl, and another 22 or so on CD, and a couple of those are duplicates. I have them on both formats, so around 41 on vinyl. And for some of these questions, I'm going to have to make an educated guess because I don't always remember the, like for example, when I got something like the first one to show. I'm not sure I know the real answer, but the first soundtrack you ever bought. And as I say, this is a guess because I'm not actually sure, but 2001: A Space Odyssey is probably the first one I ever owned. And again, I think this may have just come into my possession. I don't really know. The funny thing is I watched this movie 3 times on one weekend when I was a teenager. It was on 3 different channels, 3 different times. I watched all 3 versions. I had read the book, and even after all that, I still don't know what the ending means. So if you know, maybe you could tell me. It's still unclear to me. So probably this one was the first one I bought. The most recent soundtrack purchase you added to your collection. Again, I don't remember the most recent one, but I think this is, I don't remember the most recent one I purchased, but this is definitely the most recent one I acquired. And I say that because I didn't buy it. So this is a soundtrack for a movie called Monkey Warfare, and this is actually how it came. There's no outer sleeve. There's just a little postcard-sized insert with no information about tracks. Tracks are not listed on here, but this was a film that was at the Toronto. This is a soundtrack for a film that was at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2006, and 1,000 of these copies were handed out to, I'm assuming, people who went to the film. I didn't go to the film. I've never seen the film. But I found this in a pile of records on the side of the road, and I decided to pick it up and see what was on it. So there's interesting things in here. A bunch of things I've never heard of before, but the Fugs are on here, Sun Ra Orchestra, and there's actually a Leonard Cohen song on here called The Old Revolution, which is, I would say, probably lesser known Leonard Cohen song, but I guess at some point I'll have to see the movie to find out what this is all about. Pink Mountaintops are also on here, and a bunch of things I've never heard of before. So the next one is, what's your most listened to soundtrack? Well, that's an easy one. I can tell you that without even thinking about it, and that's Home of the Brave, a film by Laurie Anderson. So, of course, this is a concert soundtrack, but it's more of a performance soundtrack. There's a real performance here. It's art. If you know her, she's very artistic, and there's a lot of, William S. Burroughs shows up on here. Guitar is played by Adrian Belew. I originally had this on cassette. I bought it from one of my friends who wanted to buy the CD, so I gave him like $2 for the cassette, and he went and spent more money to buy the CD. I don't have the cassette anymore, and then I have a vinyl copy that I got somewhere. I'm not sure where I got it, but it is fantastic. This is something I listened to so many times. I just love this one. I think it's one of her best records, so I think that is great. Best opening song to a soundtrack. I almost chose American Gigolo for the Blondie song, but I instead chose Who Made Who from AC/DC. The first track is Who Made Who, and this is a soundtrack from Maximum Overdrive, which is a Stephen King film that I have never seen, so I don't know much about it, but it starts off really aggressively. It's a good opening track, so I chose that for that one. Favorite soundtrack / score composer and your favorite composition by them. Again, I don't really have very many scores, in the traditional sense, but one that I just that answers this question, but I'm not sure if it's actually my favorite, is I just picked Vangelis because Chariots of Fire, and this is, a good one by him, so I don't know. As I say, I don't have a lot of soundtracks to even answer that question, but I think that works. A movie that has a lackluster soundtrack. Okay, well, how about Give My Regards to Broad Street by Paul McCartney? Some might disagree with that. It, of course, has No More Lonely Nights, which I think was a big hit on here. And there's some other songs that are redone, silly love songs, and a reprise of that. So I don't know. I've never seen the film. I don't know, much about it. But this one never really appealed to me. It's okay, but it's not fantastic. A soundtrack that was way better than the movie. Well, okay. Led Zeppelin. The song remains the same. I mean, have you seen this movie? It's kind of ridiculous. So, yeah, I'd say that the movie is underwhelming. In fact, when I saw it, I was kind of horrified. I actually have the movie on DVD, and yeah, I watched it once, and that was enough for me. The soundtrack is good. Maybe not the best live recording of Led Zeppelin, but I mean, this is really good. But the soundtrack, but the movie is yeah. I'm not sure. I didn't really love that. Favorite artwork or jacket or colored vinyl soundtrack. So I'm going to choose this soundtrack called Hyena by The, which is Matt Johnson. You might know him from The, very popular 80s band. So this, first of all, the cover is a faux leather cover, so it has a lot of texture to it. It might not be easy to see on the video, but it's not your usual cardboard. It's kind of an alarming gatefold sleeve. It comes with a fold around for the jacket. It also has if I can pull this out, a book. And again, I've never seen this movie either. I don't even know what it's about. So it has a lot of stills from the movie and information about the movie. So there's quite a lot of text in here. Let me just see if I can get the rest of this out. Alright, so it has also this, I guess, notice. And it's on blue vinyl. So your blue colored vinyl. And on the last side, I don't know if you can be able to see it. So it has the emblem. You might have seen this before. They're I guess you'd call it a logo, I guess. So I guess you can see that there. And this is a really good soundtrack too. I mean, on top of the fact that it has a really interesting package, it's actually a really good soundtrack. Next one, a soundtrack that needs to be reissued or first time pressing on vinyl. So the ones I thought of immediately is John Cale, who was a member of the Velvet Underground and has had a long solo career. He's released a lot of soundtracks, and I think I have 5 or 6 on CD that have never been released on vinyl. So this is just one. I could have picked a number of them. Antarctica. So there's a number of things that he's released. The Unknown. There's a couple of them, a lot of them. And I think all of these would be. He has a number of things that should be on vinyl, but he has a number of soundtracks which I think would be nice to have on vinyl. All right. A bargain bin soundtrack. So for this one, I'm going to choose a soundtrack I picked up at a thrift shop. So this was a $2 record. Bob Dylan's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. So you might know, I think the big song that everyone knows in here is Knocking on Heaven's Door. And again, for some reason, I've never seen this film either. So most of these soundtracks, I have never seen the film for them. So that's interesting. So that's a bargain bin one. A soundtrack that includes your favorite band or artist. So instead of exactly that, I chose a soundtrack that has 2 people from a favorite band. So David Greenfield and J.J. Burnell, of course, members of the Stranglers. David Greenfield died of COVID a couple of years back, but this is a soundtrack they did for a movie called Fire and Water, which I think is fantastic. Again, soundtrack is great. I've never seen the film. So 2 guys from a favorite band. A soundtrack where an actor from the movie also performs a track on the album. I was going to choose the PJ Harvey All About Eve because Gillian Anderson is on it and she is in the production, but PC-31, the Vinyl Policeman, beat me to it, so I picked something else. And I picked Pennies from Heaven. This is a promo copy. Sale is unlawful. And one of the tracks here features Steve Martin, who is in the film. So this is an interesting package because it has a number of photos. Yeah, this film, again, this should be the soundtrack to movies I've never seen because I've never seen this film either. But it has Bernadette Peters and a number of other people I don't know. Christopher Walken, never seen it. I have listened to this. You know, it's okay for what it is. Deluxe 2-record set. Pennies from Heaven. A soundtrack where a band or artist actually perform in the movie. And again, I went with a concert film, which is Stop Making Sense by Talking Heads. And I chose this because, like the Laurie Anderson one, it is sort of artistic. It's not simply a concert film. There's obviously a lot of thought went into the production and the way it was screened, or the way it was filmed. So I chose that one. Let's see, the last movie you watched that you also have the soundtrack for, and I have to dig back into my pile because if I can find it now. Oh, here it is. This one. This is the last movie I watched that I have the soundtrack for, which is Laurie Anderson's Home of the Brave, which is interesting again because it's really well done and really artistic, and I think it's great. A record store day soundtrack or score. I don't have any from record store day that are soundtracks or scores. A soundtrack from the year you were born. I don't have anything from the year I was born, but I'll show you something from a year I was not born, and that is Platoon. This is a good soundtrack. I was not born in 1986 or 1987, whenever this came out. A soundtrack blind by. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I saw this for a couple of dollars somewhere. This is Thomas Dolby music from the film Gothic. And again, I have never seen the movie Gothic. And I bought it because of the name Thomas Dolby. This is pretty good. There is one track on here there's a video for it. You can find it on YouTube called The Devil is an Englishman. And I had a vague recollection of that when I heard it, but it's not something that I have heard too many times, I'm sure of it. This film has Gabriel Byrne, Julian Sands, Natasha Richardson, etc. So I haven't seen the film on that either. A soundtrack you own on multiple formats? Well, there's several of those, but I went with Peter Gabriel, Birdie, and oddly, I have seen this film. I saw this a long time ago in residence when my musical friend decided to show a movie night. We watched this along with, I just remembered 2001 on the same night, and Altered States, I think. But this is good. There's a really excellent use of the Rhythm of the Heat, which I called The Heat here, which I think is great, because Rhythm of the Heat is my favorite Peter Gabriel song, and it shows up in a different form on this record. A soundtrack that always lifts your mood. So I picked something that reminded me of my first year in university. This is Brimstone and Treacle. Not because of the date necessarily, but because this came out long before then, but because my roommate would always sing the song Spread a Little Happiness, the Sting track on here. So he'd come into the room singing that song, and it just reminds me of that time, which was actually quite fun. So last thing is bonus shout out to other channels that love soundtracks that might do a response to this, and that I struggled with because so far I have seen some videos from channels that have already done it. So I mentioned PC31. He suggested Mike at TCAT's Deep Vinyl Tracks. I'll double down on that one. I think that would be good. And then I don't know who has soundtracks. Like I was thinking Play Vinyl in the Milky Night. Mike, does he have soundtracks? I don't know. So I don't know. Maybe if you watch this and you do soundtracks, just jump in, because I'm not sure who has soundtracks and who has a lot of soundtracks and who doesn't. So that's it for me on Tuesday, and thanks for watching.